Hey, it's Juck.
The edge is not going to the edge to say, I'm average, I'm good. I'm good for today. We got enough elite players that they should be dragging guys to be elite. It doesn't stop being average. It begins to be elite when you can cross the line. Today is that kind of day. You can feel it. You can sense it. The guy said, my body is sore. My mind is hurting. So I'm going to shut down today. We got a chance to do one thing that every team in the country can't do. We got a chance to step up, man. We got a chance to step on the ledge, you know what I mean? And to me, I think it's a free fall. To be elite, you got to take a free fall. That means you can't be afraid to go to the edge. And coach said, jump. You said, how far, coach? Where you want me to go? Every guy got a chance to do that today. If you're elite, grab somebody today. Take it with you.
Let's get it.
Grab somebody today. Take it with you.
And welcome in on a gorgeous day in Northeast Ohio. And your old pal is in a sparkling mood for how this day kind of started. So, I got this new sweet computer specifically for well, I didn't get it. My wife got it for me specifically for the show. Processing it and editing it, it takes a lot of like a big dealio in the computer to handle that kind of stuff. And she got me one with the big dealio, and it took me not long before I did this to the screen. So luckily, she purchased me the Super Mumbo Jumbo safety package because she said that she wouldn't have got it for herself, but she got it for me because I'm rough. Normally, I push back against that assertion, but I didn't much have a leg to stand on today. But that's all right. We're doing it the old way today. However, we ran into a couple of hiccups as this is now the third time I'm attempting to get this show done. The microphone just doesn't seem to be working. And I get going and I don't realize it, that I forgot I needed to stop and check. And anyway, take 3. Here we go. At least it should be awesome this time. If it's not, like, I got nobody to blame. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff to go over today. We got some bucks and dogs. We got Kirby slipping, a couple of crazy lawsuits. We're checking in on some recruits from a big weekend at recruiting in Oregon and Georgia. A lot of our Buckeye targets were in attendance. We'll see if we got any updates on them. Maybe a new option at safety that we haven't discussed in a while that maybe the Buckeyes might be kind of heading after, based on, I don't know, just reading the tea leaves of how things are going here. I'm trying to anyway. But I was on a show, a guest on a show the other night, Sunday night, and it was a live show. I'm going to put that show in the link to that show in the description of this one. So if you want to check that out, if you got nothing else to watch today, go ahead and check that out. We had a discussion about something that I had discussed here and they had discussed on their show, and they wanted to kind of do a little point-counterpoint. So we started off the show with that, and I'm going to end the show today with that clip, and then we can put the description in the bottom if you want to watch the rest of it. However, let's start here. It has been 9 months now since Connor Stallions was on the sidelines at Central Michigan with his spy glasses on at night, his spy sunglasses. And that one single picture kind of encapsulates that entire thing to me in a way that is so flipping hysterical. Like, I can't take it. That guy, his weird personality, the 500-page manifesto, the spy glasses at night with the blue dot on the Central Michigan sideline, it's everything. It is everything. And the Michigan State athletic director came out today and made a statement about being anxious, looking forward to what comes of that investigation or whatnot. But I was stunned as he said he's still not heard anything from Central Michigan. And Central and Michigan State have 2 pending games. I think one in 27 and one in like 34. Now, I am blown away that Central Michigan has not informed Michigan State and has the audacity to think that they are going to wait till this investigation comes out. It could take 3 years. It's somehow going to play Michigan State. Michigan State is playing them as a favor to them, which is what, Ohio State does with our in-state MAC schools. Play them, pay them to take the loss. Bucks get the easy win. Same type deal for Michigan State and Central Michigan. And Central Michigan has a dude on their sideline spying on them. They 100% know who it is. they 100% knew within the first 3 days. That's all easily tracked. There's a channel to track all that. Sideline passes don't come about easy. And they're still not informing Michigan State who this is. And Michigan State hasn't canceled those games. I'm telling you right now that I think the entire Big Ten, who rallied against Michigan for this entire thing, like they should come together and let Central Michigan know that, that if they want to wait till the end of this investigation for that to come out, that's fine. But if they don't get a hold of Michigan State and let them know what's going on with it, what they came up with, they don't got to let anybody know publicly, but let Michigan State know, or nobody else in the Big Ten is going to schedule them for the rest of eternity. Like never again. I think it's 100% reasonable, and I'm kind of stunned that nobody's done this yet. I think the funniest part of that whole thing is that it was Jim Mcelwain at Central Michigan, that it was on his watch. And it became a debunked story, the Jim Mcelwain shark story.
We all know I love memorabilia, so I had to get to this one, right?
Do you hear that?
Fanatics, the apparel company, NFL.
That's me.
Baseball, they make it.
Little glitch there. Just heard myself talking somewhere on this computer. Anyway, Jim Mcelwain. So Jim Mcelwain in the Shark. Jim Mcelwain, former Florida coach, and the picture of him naked with the shark in the boat, which turns out to be totally debunked and not him. But the guy looks so much like him. And that story, when that picture first leaked, I thought that they would immediately debunk it quickly. It went on for years. And I really at one point believed that actually was Jim Mcelwain. So this is the picture, if you're not familiar with it. And that is Florida coach Jim Mcelwain for 3 years to me. And then after that, I found out it wasn't really him. But for 3 years, I was convinced that was, in fact, Jim Mcelwain, bear hugging that shark in his birthday suit. And then Jim Mcelwain at the press conference talking about the sign stealer guy.
Floating around, so the sign stealer guy, our people are doing everything they can, to get to the bottom of it. We're obviously are aware of a picture floating around, so the sign stealer guy, our people are doing everything they can to get to the bottom of it. We're totally unaware of it. Certainly don't condone it in any way, shape, or form. I do know that his name was on none of the passes that were let out. Now we just keep tracing it back and try to figure it out. But it's in good hands with our people. And again, there's no place in football for that. Obviously,
So don't worry, guys. It's in good hands. 9 months later, no information as to who that mystery man was. And to this day, guys, I'm really puzzled as to just who that was. I just don't know who it was. Anybody's guess who that guy could have been. Could it be the guy who wrote a 500-page manifesto? Could it be that guy? I don't know. I think we did at one point see the ESPN facial recognition guy tweet that it was him with his fake facial recognition. Not sure how legit that was, but it was really funny. That whole thing just cracks me up, guys. The whole thing cracks me up. It's such a joke. It's just hilarious, dude. Like, yeah, they got an advantage from it, but it's so utterly hilarious. What an absolute goofball that guy is. And it will go down in college football history as just this hilarious incident and this hilarious program defending this ridiculous thing. And their fans embracing that guy. History will not look kindly on them with this. It will forever be a joke. I guess what I'm saying is we will get the last laugh. So last episode, I was talking about something that elicited a bit of a response. I was talking about special teams and the lack of a return game in special teams and how much I'm bothered by the fact that for so many years now, we have just given up on a return game. The punt returners, like his job is to just catch the ball and hand it to the offense. That's it. And I feel like that's okay when you have an offense that scores 40 points a game. When you have a team that is more dependent on defense and running the ball, then the importance of a good return game, kind of goes up a bit. And I am of the mind now, which I did not used to be previously, that it's time to embrace special teams seriously and put one of our big dogs back there to return kicks. Now, a lot of people disagree with me on this, and I totally understand. I used to feel that way too. I used to feel that way when this big switch happened to most of us in football. And that is somewhere around 2017 ish, when kind of all throughout the NFL and college football, everybody stopped putting their good players back there returning punts. It just kind of swept the nation. And then that became the norm. And I ran across some statistics today. So from 2004 to 2015, 12 seasons, Ohio State had 10 times in those 12 years where they had a guy average more than 10 yards per return. In 8 seasons since 2016, not a single guy has done that. And the average is 6.8 yards a return. Nationally ranked 105, 98, 73, 72, 73, 100, 59, 114. So terrible, right? Now, you say, why do we care about a 4-yard difference on an average return? Well, we care because it's that difference because those guys were busting longer ones. And it's those busted long ones that change momentum, that make a big difference in a game, particularly in a second half. We've seen it 100 times, especially in a big game. It can change a lot. And if you give yourself 0 opportunities, then, well, you're never going to have that. Now, what's the difference between 04 and 15 that made it change between 16 and now? Well, in that time period, you had Ted Ginn do that 3 times, Santonio Holmes do that 2 times, Jalen Marshall do that 2 times, Brian Hartline, Philly Brown, Ray Small. In almost all those cases, we're talking about the absolute best return guy on the team was returning. So when you put your best guy back there and you embrace it, you get good results. And if there's ever a year we're going to do that, I think this is the year. So totally respect if you disagree, but I'm sick of the bubble wrap mentality with the football players. You can play that stuff with the quarterback. The rest of these dudes are dogs, man. They're football players. Let them play football. That's how I feel about it. Sorry if you disagree with it, but that's how I feel. The way Urban Meyer embraced special teams with starters when he first came in really changed the culture of special teams. It became the cool thing to do. And it became something that everybody was eager to get to and get done and excel in. And I really miss that. I would like to see that come back for one season. And if it's ever gonna, this would be the year. All right. So there was a big weekend in recruiting. Georgia had their big scavenger hunt over the weekend where they bring in a ton of top prospects. They split up in 2 groups and they all go looking for Kirby together, right? So Oregon did the exact same thing, except, well, they're not looking for Kirby. They're looking for Dan Lanning, but it's a scavenger hunt, same deal. Dan Lanning essentially ripped every single thing off of Georgia and moved it up to Oregon. That's why people call it an SEC team, which has always bothered me because there's a big difference between like the top 4 SEC teams and the rest of the SEC. So I've always resented when people say it's like an SEC team. You know what? There's Georgia and Alabama. There's usually 2 spots below them that are a revolving door between Florida, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee. You know, they revolve, but no, the whole SEC does not look like that. However, Oregon does. And they had some serious prospects this week, though they did not get Decorian Moore up there. But let's go over the Buckeye targets who were in attendance. Big one in defensive tackle, Trajan Odom. So Trajan Odom out of North Carolina, he is a big nose tackle, and Larry wants him bad. Oregon rolled out the red carpet for him. They've put a ton of resources into landing him, and he had a bunch of time personally with Dan Lanning this weekend. An Oregon insider who is a guy that's been pretty spot on over the transfer portal time and last recruiting cycle now believes that Trajan Odom is down to Oregon and USC, whatever that's worth. I kind of think he's pretty spot on usually, so that's not great news. Naeem Offord was also up there. Naeem has been dead locked in with OG Walt. I'm not concerned about that a bit. Jonah Williams, who is a guy that the Buckeyes would love to have at safety from Texas. He's a high school linebacker. He's going to be a safety in college, and he's a top 10 overall player. The dude's really good, but I've not felt the entire time like the Buckeyes have made a ton of headway in with him. So, you know, it would not be. I'd much rather he went to Texas than Oregon. I guess we'll put it that way. But it's looking nice for Oregon on him too. They also had Douglas Utu, who is an offensive line target out of Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. And Douglas went up there with his teammate, who's also a lineman. They're both excellent linemen, both going to play very high level. And they apparently went up together. So Justin Hill, our future Jack, Winton Woods superstar, who really likes Alabama, also likes Oregon, but ultimately I still feel really good about that one for us. And quarterback Ryder Lyons, who Chip offered about a week and a half ago when he was in Folsom, California. He is maybe the number 2 overall in 2026 and probably one of the better playmakers we've seen in a long time, combining his ability to extend a play, throw on the run, and everything about him. Really good quarterback. So those dudes were all up there. As for Georgia, they hosted David Sanders, and this was their second time in maybe 3.5 weeks having Sanders and his family on campus. Sanders kind of started off leaning heavy. Clemson, who he loved growing up, and also South Carolina to stay close to home. As his recruitment's gone on, that close to home thing is kind of stretched a little more and a little more. And it kind of seemed for a little bit like it was Ohio State and Tennessee. And now it kind of feels like it's Ohio State and Georgia to me. Georgia's made a lot of headway. I still think we're looking really good for this. Tennessee's still in the mix. So is Clemson. But Ohio State and Georgia, it might just come down to the two of us for that one. It's been Bo Jackson, who we've been talking about a lot lately with a lot of concern. Bo was on his official visit in Georgia, and Bo really likes Georgia, and he has family down there on his mom's side. I was reading a lot of the Georgia guys' kind of internal stuff, and most of their guys don't feel quite as confident about Bo Jackson as Steve Wiltfong would lead everybody to believe. Steve Wiltfong said, a week and a half ago, that he believes Georgia now leads for Bo Jackson. Those guys aren't so sure about that, which makes me feel great, obviously. Trey McNutt was also down at Georgia. He worked out with them as well, and they are obviously pretty enamored by him. I think that NIL is going to play a really big part in McNutt's recruitment here, and his ultimately his decision. And that's going to present a really interesting situation for the Buckeyes, and I'll be, really interested to see what way they go with it. You can't really – there's a lot of people who say you absolutely cannot miss on Trey McNutt, given who he is, where he's from, and what position he plays. So you would think that for some people that means you do whatever the hell you have to do to win that battle. And – if he is a guy who is, really looking for NIL, like that's a number one, like he wants to be paid like that, like he's the number one guy in the country. And, that's his right if he wants to go about it like that. However, if he does, I don't see Georgia or Ohio State going all in on a safety like that. I just don't. I think they'll go ahead and bow out and let Texas A&M and Oregon kind of handle those kind of dollars when it comes to a safety. That's just my feel on it. You can go in really big usually on, well, I don't want to say usually. We've only got 1 year really of experience with this where we saw him really go all in on JJ for sure. And we know they went in really hard on Edric too. But, JJ was like, it just felt like we're going to do whatever we have to do here. And I think that was the right decision. I think if they were going to do that this cycle, David Sanders would definitely qualify. I don't know if anybody else does, definitely there are rare players in this class, but, if you're just going to pick one and, a left tackle, a quarterback, usually where you're going to go. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out. But I definitely don't think they're going to get the hometown discount for McNutt. Put it that way. Wide receiver target, Phillip Bell. Heartline really likes Phillip Bell. Phillip Bell is a West Coast kid. He is big in with USC. He was down in Georgia. Most people are saying they think he's going to stay on the West Coast. We'll see. Also down there was Zaire Addison, who the Buckeyes offered last week. Zaire Addison is not him. Zaire Addison is a big old left tackle who says he is the number one left tackle in the country. I love his confidence. He said it in an interview. He tweeted it. An Ohio State or a news guy tweeted that he had an offer from Ohio State last week, and he retweeted that and wrote, "I'm the best left tackle." So I love this dude's confidence. Wrestler, stud, absolute unit. He's built like a tank, pretty highly ranked and confident. Give me him. Now, Messiah Delhomme is a guy who is out of Newport News, Virginia. They call it bad news. The locals do. Allen Iverson and Mike Vick's hometown. And this dude, the Buckeyes have been in on for about 6 months. He's an athlete. He's going to play safety. Big dude, really athletic. And he's got offers from Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Maryland. Looks like the Bucks are going to have an official visit. He has visited 2 times with the Buckeyes. And I would not be surprised if we saw a little more traction on him picking up and a little more talk about him. So that's about that for our recruiting update, other than Fahim Delane was not at either one of those places. He was at an Under Armour camp in Maryland. So he is down right now, I think, to Virginia Tech, Ohio State, Oregon, Maryland, and LSU. He made an official to Virginia Tech, and his brother is a transfer at Virginia Tech. So I don't think he'll end up at Virginia Tech, but maybe they go together somewhere. Who knows? Originally, the Buckeyes were taking a little bit of heat for Deshaun Stewart and Cody Haddad. So Deshaun Stewart out of New Jersey, bit of an underranked guy in my opinion. And Cody Haddad, I think everybody feels that way because Cody Haddad from St. Ignatius only played 4 games his junior year. And the 4 games he put on film were fantastic. But a lot of folks did not like the idea of taking those 2 guys because it maybe jeopardized the dream class. So the dream secondary class would have been to get Fahim Delane, Dorian Brew, and Trey McNutt all in that safety class to go along with Devin and Naeem. And yeah, man, it's great to look at. It's awesome, to say we got ones, twos. It was fun. We did an episode about it, 1 or 2 maybe. But everybody knows that's not going to happen. And that was never going to happen. So you're heading in here and you got an option to either take these 2 guys or you don't take them for numbers' sake because you don't want to miss out on the other dream scenario guys. And then if they spurn you at the end, you turn and Haddad and Stewart are locked in somewhere else and you got caught with your pants down. I think we've seen this happen too many times. I've learned my lesson when it comes to my thinking about that. Like, no, take the sure thing, who's a really good player, and you try your best to get the big dogs. Don't worry about the numbers. If you got to go over the number and figure it out later. They always seem to find a way to figure it out. So that's kind of my thought on that. But I'm really happy that they took both those dudes. I think they're both excellent football players. A couple of weeks ago, maybe about 10 days ago, I guess, and I had missed this originally, but Dorian Brew and Devin Sanchez were working out together with one other dude from Houston. And Dorian Brew, being close to Devin, that's a good thing. But he was also did an interview with Mark Givler of Buckeye Huddle the other night that I caught. And Dorian Brew, we've thought, has been kind of fading for a long time to Texas. His dad's now coaching in Conroe, Texas. And I got to tell you, listening to this video, there's no doubt that this guy's got a lot of love for Ohio State, considers himself an Ohio high school football player, and it just sounds like he has a real affinity for Ohio. With Blake Woodby leaving, even though Brew is figured to be a safety, could that maybe help kind of reopen that a little bit, reinvigorate that with Brew? I sure hope so. He's definitely an excellent player for sure. As awesome as all these other guys are, I feel like he's the one that's been talked about the most of that kind of Dream 5 scenario. But he definitely doesn't deserve to be. He's fantastic. So hopefully we can get some movement on there. Big lawsuit dropped today. Big lawsuit. So Jaden Rashada is suing Billy Napier, a Florida booster, and a former staffer who was at Florida, and the car dealership that Florida booster owns. This is the really bad thing about NIL as recruiting inducements. So you got these dudes that are 17, and these guys at that age who are going to be stars in high school have always had people try to latch onto them, the third uncle, and steer them in a way that's going to be advantageous for the adult. We've always seen it. When you add that these guys no longer are waiting 3 years to get that big payday, like it's actually coming next week for these adults who are steering them around. It's a bad situation for a lot of them. It's a bad situation, and they can get taken advantage of. And Jaden Rashada did. So he was originally signed with Miami. The suit alleges that there was a $9.5 million offer for Miami. Jaden Rashada signed the NIL deal with John Ruiz, a notorious Miami booster. And then Florida wanted to sign him. So the guy that owns the car dealership, the booster, was kind of running one of their collectives. It's now defunct. And he offered him 13.85. It sounds like that 13.85 never existed because he couldn't even come up with like 500,000 of it. The only money Rashada ever received for that deal from Florida that he made, as he ended up flipping out from Miami and going with Florida, was $150,000 to pay off Ruiz at Miami to make sure there was no legal action coming his way. So by the time they were supposed to get the first payment at Florida, Rashada never gets it. Ends up Napier trying to keep him in the fold, and Napier's telling him they're good for it. The Florida boosters are good for it. That right there is a big violation by Napier. He wasn't allowed to do that. If the NCAA investigation would have kept going on into them, it's not going to, because Tennessee sued, and that stopped all NIL investigating from the NCAA. But had it gone on, Napier would have been in big trouble for what he did right there. So Napier was definitely involved. They definitely misled him, Napier, whether it was intentional or not. And I would hope it's not intentional on Napier's part. It certainly seems like in this scenario to me that the booster with the car company was a bit of a fraud. Originally, the payments were supposed to come from his car dealership, and then when it became time to pay, he kind of switched it up and said, well, now I'm selling that car dealership, so we're actually going to fund this payment through the other Florida collective. I'm going to funnel money to them, and they're going to funnel it to you. So it just sounds like this dude was a shady dude all the way around. And I would like to think that it was mostly him here. But, Napier got his hands in the pot. He got his hands involved and stuck his neck out on behalf of that guy. And by doing that, whether he knew or he didn't, he's now got himself in a sticky situation. Then you got Rashada, who goes from Miami, where he had inked an NIL deal. And if that's my kid, you're done. You just signed this NIL deal. But that's not what happened. Florida offers more money, so they try to weasel out of this deal to go get this deal, chasing a couple of bucks. And because there was no money at Florida to get, they end up at Arizona State for peanuts. The kid works his way kind of back up last year with a couple of starts, looking good. And then Kirby brings him into Georgia. Now, Kirby bringing him into Georgia obviously made sense for Kirby's roster. But Kirby knew ahead of time that this lawsuit was going through against Billy Napier. Florida, obviously Georgia's biggest rival. And it's a crazy story now. What we've got is a quarterback at the University of Georgia suing the head coach at Florida. Like that's bizarre. That's bizarre on its face. But if I'm Kirby Smart, man, I'm not touching that kid with a 10-foot pole. You got maybe the most stable program in all college football, which some could argue, yeah, it is that stable, so you can take chances like that. I don't even think the dude's worth that kind of risk. I don't think he's worth any of these gambles. I don't think he's a guy I'd want around my program. I'm sorry. I just don't like kids like him. I don't like the money chasing. I'm under contract. I don't care. I'm flipping, going for the biggest dollar wherever I can get it. That's not the kind of player I want on my team. It's just not. So, I, I'm not rooting against the dude, but and I hope that he wins his lawsuit and gets taken care of the way he should, because it sounds like they screwed him legally and they should be on the hook for that. But as far as football, I don't want someone who bounces around schools like that looking for the biggest payday. That's not the player I want on my team. And I'm really surprised by what I thought I knew of Kirby Smart. And clearly I don't. Kirby Smart is a very, very weak leader. He's a very weak leader, which we will get to in a moment. Every once in a while, if I am doing a story and it kind of relates to something that I did in a past show, I will take the time, and it takes a lot of time because I don't categorize things well, to go back through my files and find the original clip of what I was talking about and play it, and then do my follow-up right after that. Well, today I was thinking, I was like, dude, I've got two things I want to talk about that I talked about once before. So I go back looking for one, and wouldn't you know it, they were in back-to-back segments in the same episode, which was quite exciting. Here's the first one. The programs are built the same way. They follow the same philosophies. I think Ohio State as a program is in the same position as Georgia's in right now. And Georgia, of course, has the edge with the experienced quarterback in Carson Beck, who could be the best quarterback in the country. Some people think so. I think he's the best quarterback coming back that you can say, you can identify as the best quarterback. I don't think that's how it's going to end up. But that's currently the only difference between these two teams. And it's the only difference that makes them, Georgia, the odds-on favorite over Ohio State to win the national championship. Ohio State is number 2 in the odds in every book in Vegas. But I believe Ohio State has the edge. And I believe they have more areas on the Ohio State team where they are superior to Georgia. And I think Ohio State is going to be the odds-on favorite. We're looking at them right now as they stand. Ohio State has the edge. The only reason Georgia is being given the benefit of the doubt now is because they've done it and Ohio State hasn't. But this Georgia team is not that Georgia team, and it's not the Georgia, it sure as heck isn't the Georgia team the year before that. So they're only getting the benefit of the doubt because Kirby has been there and done that, and Kirby is being kind of viewed as potentially this next kind of Saban-esque coach. But he's not. There's only one Saban. He's a beatable coach, and that's a beatable program. So I did not make that pick because I am a homer, though I am, but I try to look at things objectively. And I also try to think about what the betting public is going to feel about this. And I really felt like when everybody kind of came around to actually seeing what was going on at Ohio State, there would be a groundswell of support for Ohio State. Clearly, that's what's happened here. The money's moved in heavily on Ohio State, and the odds, which were at Georgia plus 350, Ohio State plus 600. Ohio State was lumped in with Texas and Oregon, and the Bucks just kept on trucking. The other day, Dave Biddle on Bucknuts Morning 5 said the Buckeyes are plus 350 now. Georgia's at plus 325, and it's just keeping on trucking. When you look at these two teams and compare them to each other, Georgia has a proven quarterback who is supposedly the best quarterback coming back in college football. He's the best guy last year that is returning. I'll give him that. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as everybody thinks he is. Like he's an accurate guy, yes. He doesn't throw the ball great downfield. Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers were his two main targets. They're both gone. He can't move. He doesn't extend plays. I don't think he's that good. And I think that if you're going to look at these two teams and compare the groups, position group by position group, the Buckeyes win a pile of those, more than Georgia. They win in quarterback. They win in offensive line, two of the most important. And you would have to give the edge to Kirby. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you would pick Kirby. You might pick the hungrier coach. You might pick the coach who was just like Kirby when he beat Saban. And that coach coaches the other guys. And you might pick the team with the best quarterback, or you might pick the team with the best defense, like Georgia in 2021, which was a defense with NFL players on all three levels and NFL backups and a deep defensive line. a quarterback that didn't play in the NFL or won't play in the NFL, but is a savvy veteran. Leadership all over the field. You might choose that team, and that's who I choose, the Buckeyes. And I am very excited for the Georgia faithful who have been so dismissive of Ohio State and so arrogant to get their comeuppance and at the end of the season be questioning what is wrong with Kirby after he gets booted by Saban and Ryan Day to end the season early in consecutive years after winning his 2 national titles, one of which the Buckeyes should have won. And I think people forget that. It should be 1-1 right now. It's not, but it very easily could be. And if it was, that ridiculous thing that I said back in that episode that I got crucified for, that was my most popular episode. It got spread by Georgia folks. 10,000 views. It wasn't Buckeye. It was Georgia folks. And even Uncle Lou, resident Georgia SEC honk.
And you already know Ohio State's not winning a natty unless they somehow get all the way through the playoffs without having to play an SEC team. Ohio State can't beat an SEC team if their life depended on it.
Made a comment on that video. I got a lot of nasty ones talking about how insane I was. He went ahead and called me crazy too. And then he went after spring and did his updated spring, post-spring top 25. And the Buckeyes were number 1 on his poll. So, you know, I'll be waiting for my apology a long time on that one, I'm sure. All right, we're losing the headphones. We got sweaty ears. Georgia freshman wide receiver Sakovi White was arrested in Athens over the weekend, and you'll never guess for what reason. Driving the wrong way down a one-way road at a high rate of speed with somebody hanging out the passenger side of the car. The officer's statement includes, White showed a complete disregard for the safety of his passengers, himself, and innocent civilians, and posed a threat to public safety as the incident occurred during a time of high pedestrian traffic as people were leaving bars trying to catch Ubers, according to the report. Kirby Smart still cannot get a hold of his program when it comes to driving fast cars. And as much as I want to laugh at this, it's not funny, man. They had a guy die on the team and a staffer drag racing another one of their players just a little bit ago. They've had 300 traffic citations issued to Georgia players since Kirby took over. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen that one specific area is just this repeated crime over and over and over again at one place. I don't know what it is. I've heard people try to figure it out. They've talked about maybe overzealous police in that town. I can't figure it out. I don't know what it is. Kirby says he thinks that they give better education about, or they give more educational speakers to the Georgia players than anybody else in the country. And he believes that with more money now, people, the students, athletes have more cars. So it, is going to obviously be more traffic citations if they have more cars, which is true. But it would also be true everywhere else. And nobody else has this issue. Having just had the Etienne DUI a little bit ago that we just talked about. And now this one here, he's got to do better, man. These dudes aren't listening to him. This is embarrassing. If I'm a leader, I'm humiliated by this, that this continually keeps happening, embarrassing the university, embarrassing everybody, and really making him look like a sorry leader. Seriously, it does. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing, and so is taking on Rashada. So anyway, I don't know, man. I think I'm calling for Kirby's resignation at this point. So I was on a podcast on Sunday night, and it was a live podcast. It was a live podcast called the OHIO podcast. And the subject at hand was Ryan Day in the hot seat. That's how they wanted to start the show. Now, I made a slew of points, and basically my stance is if we are going to determine whether or not he's on the hot seat, what you need to do is put yourself in the shoes of the athletic director and think through the prism with which he would think, because we're not the ones making the decision. Now, the average NFL team is worth $5 billion bucks. So $5 billion for the average NFL team. If you were to put a dollar figure on the Ohio State Buckeye football program, what would you say? Let's just conservatively say it, maybe close to $1 billion business. It's $1 billion entity. Athletic directors and presidents are stewards for that $1 billion entity. So they're looking at that through the prism of a business decision, not an emotional decision, not a decision out of anger. However, they are always factoring in the customer's anger in a business. If customers are angry, you're definitely factoring that into your decision. And, we are the customers of that business. So that's how you're going to look at that if you're an AD. And I kind of broke that down, and I'll play that at the end of the show. But I just want to point out that the very last point I made in that show about Ryan Day, when I was breaking down his program from that stance, and I guess finally you would kind of look at the culture of the program in general. There's never any off-field problems. There's never any issues with anybody. They represent the program great in the NFL, success in the NFL. The best young quarterback sings Ryan Day's praises. And when you take all that, if I'm the AD and I'm looking at all of those positives compared to the negatives, I guess what I'm asking myself is, how much longer do I give him before I tear this down if he doesn't get it done? And if I'm doing that, it's definitely not going to be just this 1 year contingent on just this one game. I just walked into this place. This guy's got it cooking. He's got it cooking. He's got the trend line straight up. And he's definitely getting 2 years if I'm in that position. And in my estimation, that is probably what he's thinking. So that's my case, buddy. Was the culture. And that he absolutely never has a single issue off field with not one of his guys. And it starts from the time he recruits them to the time he brings them in to the culture that they have around the building and what they emphasize while they're there. Not a single one. And when you look at him and you look at a program like Georgia, who honestly is not bad, right? But yeah, they did have people die in a car accident, drag racing, and they're still getting dinged for speeding around the city. We have none of that at Ohio State. Ryan Day deserves credit for that, like a lot. And if you are someone who is in charge, that's definitely something you're looking at. But the entire spiel will be at the end of the episode here. And I will link the whole episode in the description if you guys want to check it out. All right. We all know I love memorabilia, so I had to get to this one, right? Fanatics, the apparel company, NFL, Major League Baseball, they make a ton of stuff. Most people don't like their stuff, but they entered an agreement, alleged agreement, with Marvin Harrison in 2023 for Marvin Harrison to sign a bunch of stuff for them. It was $1 million agreement, according to them, and they are alleging, or they sued Marvin for breach of contract of a binding term sheet. So, by filing this lawsuit, they obviously believe they're 100% correct here. A binding term sheet is usually a precursor to a long-form contract. Now, there can be a contract before a long-form contract is signed if that binding term sheet contains all the terms. So that's what's at question here. Are all the terms contained in that binding term sheet? Because if they are, then the judge will most likely deem that, yes, that was a contract. Now, we can assume the Fanatics certainly thinks that's the case, and their legal team has certainly gone over that. And they believe that the official Harrison Collection, LLC, signed it, agreed to it, and then ghosted them. And they claim that they paid Harrison in both August and in October of 2023 to sign memorabilia. Harrison ignored and rejected their attempts to get a hold of him and to sign the stuff. And according to The Athletic, Harrison said that another trading card company came and made them a competing offer that was more than Fanatics, and they demanded that Fanatics matched that offer or they were going to go elsewhere. Fanatics said, okay, send us the offer, and the Harrisons never provided it. Fanatics also claimed in the lawsuit that Marvin Harrison disclosed confidential information about the agreement in an attempt to mislead the public to ESPN. Now, the week of the NFL draft, Harrison Sr. requested a copy of Junior's term sheet from Fanatics. Fanatics sent it over. Then they tried to get a hold of Harrison Sr. to, again, they're still attempting, they say, to get their stuff signed. And according to them, Harrison Sr. said after receiving that term sheet, we don't have a deal. Now, Fanatics is claiming they are still trying to just compel Harrison to fulfill his obligations. They are requesting a jury trial, and the estimated damages will be within the millions of dollars. I find this all really strange, man, like really strange. So clearly, I love memorabilia. Have since I was a kid. It's my bag, man. It's one of my things. So that's why I got really interested here. Now, it wasn't too long ago that I was listening to Bobby Carpenter's show, and Bobby Carpenter was talking about going in the Ohio State bookstore and noticing that there was no Marvin Harrison jersey. So he went up and said, "Where's the Marvin jerseys?" And they said, "We don't have them." He said, "What do you mean they don't have him? He's the most popular guy on the team." He didn't sign the paperwork. So he said he went to Marvin and said, "Marvin, why didn't you sign this paperwork?" And Marvin said something, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's something to the effect of he didn't want to go through it. And Bobby said, "You don't have to do anything. You sign the paper, they give you money. That's it." Bobby was kind of incredulous. This had not happened yet. Well, the Harrisons, clearly that was intentional. It wasn't an accident, or it wasn't because it was a pain in the butt. They want everything in-house. They have not signed now with the NFL Players Association, so they won't be in the Madden game. The NFL won't be selling Marvin's jerseys. There will be no shirts with Marvin Harrison, none of it. And to my knowledge, I don't think anybody else has done this in the NFL. But the Harrisons are doing it. It's their prerogative. It's their money they're losing out. But I'm just trying to figure out what's the angle here. So after I listened to Bobby's show, I went looking for a Marvin jersey. And you find the usual crappy jerseys pop up, bootleg looking websites, bootleg looking jerseys. But, you know, they're $80 jerseys. They're good enough for most people who wear jerseys just to a game or whatever. And that's what most people buy. I never once, when I was looking through all the options of Marvin Harrison jerseys, stumbled upon the Harrison Collection website that sold the jerseys Marvin wants people to buy. Now, I found them today. Clearly, they're getting jerseys made up overseas, probably for about $15, and then they got to pay whatever to ship them out to whoever buys them. They're trying to sell them for $80. It's obviously not an official jersey, right? So they're technically selling you could call it a bootleg jersey as well. It's not a Nike jersey. In fact, it doesn't have a logo on it at all. So the consumer has the option to either buy the bootleg jersey that actually looks like the real jersey with the swoosh and with the proper looking bootleg stitching. I mean, you know, Nike's got a pattern for the stitching. Marvin's jersey doesn't have any of that. Doesn't have a logo. The collar looks a little wonky. I don't know exactly how much the NFL player makes off of the normal jerseys that they sell. It's probably pretty small, $5 a jersey, $8 a jersey. They don't release the information, but the quantity of sales that Marvin's already missed out on from the time he was at Ohio State, as hot as he was and as popular as he was across the country, to now, since the draft with the Cardinals, they've missed out on an enormous number of units that could have been moved. I can't imagine they're selling many on this website. Like I said, I couldn't even find it, and I was looking for Marvin jerseys. Even if I wanted a Marvin jersey, I would not buy this jersey that they have on their website with no logo on it and the funky looking collar and the stitching all wrong. But I know that I'm a little more picky about that probably than many people. But if you put it side by side with any of the bootlegs that you find when you do an original search, you wouldn't either. 9 out of 10 people wouldn't either. And even though you know, like, okay, this money's going to Marvin, when someone becomes a big, wealthy, Marvin's very wealthy now, it kind of loses that, like, I want to make sure Marvin gets the $5 off this jersey that you kind of have when they're a college kid, right? It kind of loses that luster. So you're going to want, okay, I'm going to pay what I want for the one I want. They're both the same amount of money. Just objectively speaking, the bootleg ones, and I'll put them up, like the bootleg ones look way better than the ones that they're selling on the Harrison collection. So I don't understand what the deal is. I mean, I know that 9 out of 10 people are going to choose the bootleg one. I know that very few people, unless they know specifically about Marvin's collection, are going to go looking for his website. So even though they're making way more profit per unit doing it this way, they're selling next to, they have to, if the NFL sells 100 Marvin Harrison units to Marvin's one unit, which it would even surprise me if he was selling one to the 100 that they could move of his, and he was making $15 profit off of his, or if he was making $50 profit off of his one jersey, but only 5 off of the ones that the NFL's selling for him, I mean, that's way more money going that way. And he doesn't have to deal with any of this, getting them printed, shipping them out. There's a reason the NFLPA doesn't bring this all in-house, and they've got all the NFL players to represent. They're not in the jersey manufacturer or distribution business. They don't have warehouses to store them. They don't ship them out. Like, this is a whole nother deal. I don't know what they're doing, man. This is weird to me. I don't get the angle. I don't understand. There's no way they could possibly make as much money doing it this way. No chance. So there has to, they obviously know this too. So there has to be something else that they're angling for with this name recognition. Like, what else is there that I'm not seeing that they can do without being in the NFLPA? Marvin Harrison Sr. is a smart dude. I'm not seeing it. Do you guys got an idea? I don't know. But they've missed out on a ton of money in jersey sales already. They're going to miss out on a ton of money more his rookie year. And if he goes out and starts balling and that jersey takes off or would have taken off, like, nobody's going to find his website to buy that jersey. They're just going to buy the knockoff. They just are. As far as this lawsuit's concerned, boy, man, I hope he doesn't lose this lawsuit. He's just signing them to do this with it and them to do that with it. And he's just saying no to all that money. I don't understand. I don't get it. And obviously nobody else does either, because nobody else is doing it. So, I don't know. We'll see. All right. So the other day I got a new camera. And I was thinking, what the heck am I going to do with my new camera that's going to look cool? What can I do with it? And I saw a Ryan Day clip with Bo Bishop, and I thought, okay, I got something. So basically, I've got a running kind of joke, and my running joke kind of has a broader theme to it. But the joke is this: Ryan Day, or all college coaches, if you will, do not answer questions directly. Now, we call this loosely coach speak, but this is way more. This is to a way different degree. The college football enterprise is very, very different than the NFL. And the NFL has 9 pages of media stuff that they have to comply with, all the teams. There isn't any of that in college football, and isn't any of that because each college football program, it's a university and they set their own rules. And if they're inviting the press in, that's their prerogative. They can have them in, or they can not, or they can pull your access. They can do whatever they want. So it creates this dynamic where they're doing you a favor. And if they're doing you a favor, they're going to do it their way on their terms, and they don't answer your questions. It's just that simple. Now, there is a certain part where they feel obligated to answer their questions, or the fans will get very furious, and that's when they screw up. But if it's not about something screwing up, they won't answer your questions. So what we have is that, and we also have the other part of it, which is a whole lot of traditional media folk have now parlayed their traditional media jobs into online businesses, and their online businesses are 100% revolving around Ohio State football or LSU football or whatever school they're at. And that's everywhere, not unique to Ohio State. But what that creates is now you've got people whose livelihoods are depending on this access. And that's why we sometimes get, I'll give you an example. So let's say, for instance, you and I were at a press conference at about the middle of last year, and we're talking to Ryan Day, and it's our turn to ask a question. We may ask a question like this: Coach Day, every time Dallin Hayden has ever played, he's been effective. The running back room is decimated by injuries. Why are you concerned about preserving a red shirt 3 years down the road rather than play him now when it can clearly help the team? We might ask that. How it kind of came out and what we heard from the guys in the room went a little more something like this: Coach Day, we understand that Dallin Hayden has really struggled in pass protection. You've been able to use him a little bit while still preserving his red shirt. What are your thoughts on that? You see the difference there? So one way I can make it for the listener to hear Coach Day is doing exactly what he should be doing, see? And you lead him right into the answer. And the other way, I confront him directly with what everybody else is thinking. Now, I could ask it the first way and I would piss him off, or I could ask it the second way and everybody's happy. The reader's happy because their reporter who they trust asked the question he was supposed to ask. He asked him about Dallin Hayden, didn't he? He did. He did ask him about him. So he checked his box that he did ask about it. Did he actually try to get the answer? Well, hell no, he didn't. You know he didn't. And that's what I'm talking about. So we have ourselves a masterful spin doctor in Columbus. The dude's the best. And I don't fault him for not answering questions. A lot of questions I wouldn't want to answer, and a lot of questions I don't want him to answer if they're going to put the program in any kind of jeopardy or cause internal strife or arguments amongst the team or the coaching staff. Absolutely not. But when that is your habit and you do that 80% of the time, the other 20, when you could just answer the question, your habit is to not say shit. So you just spin all day. And I find it hilarious. It's very funny. So I tried to do a little skit kind of playing off that. And admittedly, I wasn't really even using, so it wasn't really kind of that's not what it was about. I mean, it was a bad clip. I used a bad clip to try to get my point across there. And it didn't land for some of you. And you actually thought that I was mad about him not naming a starting quarterback, which wasn't my point at all. And it's my fault that you didn't understand it. I'm the guy who tried the joke. And if you don't get it, it's my fault. But some people did get it and they liked it. However, I just want to be clear here. I have no problem with Ryan Day not naming a starting quarterback. I don't want him to name a starting quarterback until he's damn good and ready to name a starting quarterback. In fact, I've been on the show and railed against anybody suggesting that he should change the way he does and name a starting quarterback with respect to the transfer portal. I think that's utterly absurd. He should not change anything. So just wanted to clear that up. And next time I will make sure I do a better joke. But remember, that was just a 60-second intro. It wasn't really even part of the show. As far as I'm concerned, it was a bonus. And, I'm sorry you didn't like my bonus. Also got this morning, and I just thought this was hilarious because I've never seen this in my life. Suck girls? What in the hell does that even mean? Michigan beats Suck girls in Columbus? Like, each one of these guys is dumber than the last one. All right, guys, what I'm going to do now is play the clip of the Ryan Day discussion that I had in the show the other night. It was an hour and a half long show, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. I'll link the rest of the show in the description. And until then, please like the video, and I will see you next time. Juck and Bucks out.
We're going to open this thing up to the chat and let them ask you some questions, ask maybe some topics that we want to talk about, see where this thing leads us tonight. Because I think there's some things in the off season we need to talk about. I was on a show earlier today, which will be recorded tomorrow. It's the Big Ten Football Talk with Zach Guggenheim. And he wanted to talk to me about this very first topic that you've addressed and this man is passionate about. So
I've heard him. I've heard you, Wild.
I'm going to turn it over to the Wild Man to open up the floor. Let's have a great roundtable discussion. Chat, you chime in. We'll throw your topic. We'll throw your comments up as it relates to this topic. But Chris, take it away tonight, big guy.
All right, Juck. So you said you've heard my take on this already.
I have.
So I am very passionate about that. I do think Ryan Day is on the hot seat. Before we jump in with my views, though, and exactly why I think that, what is your take on the subject?
So my take is, I guess it depends, right? So it depends on what you mean by the hot seat. Now, is he on the hot seat with the fan base? I think there's a whole lot of fans that find him on the hot seat. When I hear someone on the hot seat, my take is with his superior, as in like this year, you need to get it done or else. And I just kind of put myself, if that's what you mean by the hot seat, in this position of his superiors. And if I'm analyzing the program right now, as it currently sits after this offseason, with Ryan Day having definitely struggled in big games, it's unacceptable. The big games are, for sure. There's no denying that. The 1-3 record against Michigan is not acceptable. The 3 in a row is not acceptable. But we're looking at everything that's happened in this offseason, from the coaching staff changes, giving up play calling, getting rid of the weak links on the coaching staff, and Perry Eliano, getting him out of here, getting Corey Dennis out of here, getting Parker Fleming out, the way he kind of pushed out Tony Alford, made a great hire in Coach Locke to replace him, hired Laurinaitis, gave Knowles his guy in Guerreri, who's kind of a really underrated hire at this point. We don't talk about him much, but he's a future defensive coordinator. Being able to keep Hartline happy for so many years and keep him involved and not, moving on. Being involved actively in NIL and bringing that up to one of the best in the country. Yeah, he had a lot to do with that. We all know that. And when you look at all that, along with getting the senior class to basically all come back, that doesn't happen unless they love their coach and their program. Add on to that Saban's retirement and the power vacuum that was created there. Ryan Day ran circles around Texas, LSU, and Georgia in the attempt to fill that vacuum. Ohio State repeatedly swatted them away with everything, and now planted the flag, got Naeem Offord, Malik Autry thinking about it, Ziggy Grady thinking about it. The portal was orchestrated beautifully. He hired Sam Petito. Nick Saban's Mark Pantoni, who's from Louisiana, actually made an offer last week. He has the opportunity to win the recruiting crown, and whether he does or he doesn't, Ohio State recruiting has never been as healthy as it is right now. And maybe even more telling than all these things, the parents, the Sanchez family, out there recruiting. Their kid's the best corner in the country, and they're out there pounding the drum, recruiting for him because they believe so much in his program. And then you got a mom like Paris Johnson's mom, and Paris Johnson coming back to Columbus to help recruit David Sanders. And I guess finally you would kind of look at the culture of the program in general. There's never any off-field problems. There's never any issues with anybody. They represent the program great in the NFL, success in the NFL. The best young quarterback sings Ryan Day's praises. And when you take all that, if I'm the AD and I'm looking at all of those positives compared to the negatives, I guess what I'm asking myself is, how much longer do I give him before I tear this down if he doesn't get it done. And if I'm doing that, it's definitely not going to be just this 1 year contingent on just this one game. I just walked into this place. This guy's got it cooking. He's got it cooking. He's got the trend line straight up. And he's definitely getting 2 years if I'm in that position. And in my estimation, that is probably what he's thinking. So that's my case, buddy.
Fair enough. I feel that a lot of what you mentioned actually adds to that pressure and intensifies that hot seat. Because he's gotten so much with the NIL, because he has gotten so much money spent on this coaching staff, so much money spent on this roster, since the recruiting has been so high for the last 3 years, since he's got all these guys coming back, since you do have a new AD, and you know as well as I do, typically when an AD comes in, he likes to bring his people. Do you not think that that doesn't add to the pressure this season? That if he doesn't get it done, if he goes 0-4, if he doesn't win a national title this year, given everything that we've seen, everything we've heard, everything, all the money that's been spent, I mean, we're paying Chip Kelly an absurd amount of money for a coordinator position. We're paying Jim Knowles an absurd amount of money for a coordinator position. We do have the best recruiting assistants in the country, I believe. We've year in and year out had among the best recruiting classes in the country, only to fall short. Don't you think that adds to that pressure to get it done this season or else, so to speak? Because eventually that NIL money is going to dry up. These boosters are going to dry up if the performance isn't there. At what point do the boosters come out and say, hey, you know what? This guy's just not doing it for us. He's taking us down to the Cooper road. He is Cooper 2.0. We're not going to wait for 2-10-1.
So I definitely agree that it does add to the pressure 100%. I just really, you have to look at, from my perspective, the alternative. Mm-hmm. And the alternative is kind of tearing everything that he's just now got cooking. And I feel like we've been through all these growing pains through the Ryan Day learning how to be a head coach. Like, we've been through the worst of it. And now he's finally got everything looking like Ohio State's the place to be. The way these recruits talk about Ohio, like they want to come to his program. And that right there is just invaluable. And to make that contingent on, just, I don't know specifically what you're talking about, like what your criteria is that would be too much for you. Like, that's enough, you got to go. But I've heard people say, all right, if you lose to Michigan, you need to at least make it to the national championship game. And I think that's a fair perspective from a fan's point of view, to be honest. Like, I think that is. But if you're saying like he has to win the national championship or you want him gone, I don't know, man. It's football. It's really, really hard to win a national championship.
It is.
You know what I mean? I think that's kind of that's really an unfair bar, to be honest. That's just, to me.
Well, for me, it's like this. If you lose to Michigan again, you have to win the national title. There is no losing to Michigan 4 years in a row and flaming out in the playoffs 4 years in a row, or 3 out of 4 years.
Can I add one thing to this discussion that I think kind of adds some credence to your point, Chris, and really to your point, Juck. The way Ryan Day, with the help of the collectives, was able to build this roster this offseason is phenomenal, number one, and needs to be credited, like you did, Juck. But number two, if he fails to beat that team up north again with this roster, I think it's a fair question that the fan base gets to ask is why. And not only that, I believe that the pendulum will swing from the vocal minority saying he's on the hot seat to the vocal majority now in the ear of the AD saying, you need to do something. This is unacceptable. What's your response to that, Juck?
I don't disagree with that at all. Um, but you know what? Like when I listen to Chris, like I hear his passion and his emotion, and I think we would hear a lot more of Chris's take in that situation. Um, I'm just, coming from Chris's perspective, he's talking like a fan and not like somebody who runs an organization. Yeah, I don't think that's the
But
way
you're
Chris
right.
talks at work. You know what I mean? Like about his operation at work. Like he doesn't add that emotion into it. And Ross Bjork will not be adding his emotion into it, though he will be listening to the fan emotion for sure. And one of the things I always say is I believe the reason, not the reason, but one of the reasons that Ohio State has never gone down. We've never had a dip like anybody else. They've all had multiple dips throughout their program. All the other blue bloods, Ohio State never has. And I believe one of the reasons is because we hold our program so accountable when we see these other fan bases just stump for their program. No matter how many bad decisions they make, they stump and they fight everybody, and they always got their programs back. Like they think that's what they should do. But in fact, you should keep your guys accountable. And we do a great job of that. I love that about our fan base. And, a lot of me agrees with Chris. Coming after that Missouri game, like I was like, dude, I'm done. This guy's got one more year, man. Like that's it. Like I felt that way. But when I look at a guy who has just made all these changes in himself, like he evaluated his program, and so many of these coaches stick their head in the sand and say, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. All I need is a break. He didn't do that. He tore stuff down. He changed the way he's operating. And I feel like when you do that, to me, if I'm the guy who's running the show above him, I'm looking at a guy, okay, he just made a whole bunch of changes. Let's give him a couple years and see if his changes are going to pay off. Now, do I think this conversation is kind of moot? Yeah, I do, because I think we're going to whoop Michigan all over the field, right? Like that's what I think.